What's up, y'all? Part 3 of our little mini-series here where we break down each division in the NFL. And today we're going to be talking about the NFC East. So the NFC East obtains the Giants, Commanders, Eagles, and the Cowboys. So a couple of great teams in there. A couple of teams with a couple question marks, So, yeah, let's get straight into it. And first we're going to talk about the Giants. So obviously, Hard Knocks going on. If you guys have been watching the series, it's been very entertaining so far. I love what they do at Hard Knocks. And so, yeah, let's look at their additions. We got Brian Burns, Devin Singletary, Isaiah McKenzie, Isaiah Simmons re-signed. And in the draft, you got Malik Neighbors, pick 6. I love Malik Neighbors. I think he's going to be a great athlete. Tyler Nubbin, safety, round 2, and Andre Phillips, cornerback, round 3. So a lot of pickups there, and I think they're all pretty solid in my opinion, but we look at the losses. One of the biggest losses in all free agency, in my opinion, you losing out on Saquon Barkley, one of the best running backs in the game, and Xavier McKinney. Now, the reason why Saquon is so big on losing is because Saquon was basically the offense while Daniel Jones was out. And even when Daniel Jones was in, he was not a good quarterback at all. He was not playing up to that contract. So, some question marks there in New York, but I guess we'll see if that gets resolved. Obviously, last year was very disappointing after a playoff berth. They only ended up with 6 wins, and, you can blame that on their injury-riddled team, or you can blame that on just not executing overall. Like I said before, you're losing a key portion of your offense in Saquon. I think losing him is detrimental. I think a lot of Giants fans thought that he was going to be a Giant for life before the free agency period started. And even I thought that, there was a possibility that he was going to be signed to the Giants. And now he's moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think he's going to have a lot more opportunities there, to be honest with you. You're also losing a very good safety in Xavier McKinney. He's a stud, in my opinion. I know you drafted Tyler Nubbin to try to get a little bit of a cushion for losing Xavier McKinney, but Xavier McKinney is just a very good player overall, and I think it's gonna be tough for them to try to replicate his production. Obviously, you're hoping Daniel Jones is back next year just because of how much money you gave him. You don't want to give a dude money just to sit down on a couch. That's counterintuitive. It makes no sense. It's kind of like Ben Simmons in the NBA. He's got all this money, but he's not playing any games at all. It's kind of crazy. You obviously want Daniel Jones back either way because you don't really want Tommy DeVito starting. And I believe they actually signed Drew Lock, so you also don't want him starting either. He's a solid backup, don't get me wrong, but you really want Daniel Jones to start playing because he needs to live up to that contract. Looking more in depth on Malik Neighbors, so like I said, I think he's a great pick. I don't think he's on the level of Marvin Harrison Jr., but I still think he's a really, really good player overall. And I think he actually has a lot of potential. I think he's probably going to be the number 2 receiver in this class. I don't think there's not a world where he isn't better than Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it's still possible, but I just think, Marvin Harrison Jr. is just one of the most elite receivers I've ever seen in my life coming out of college. So, and then you also you got Brian Burns for not too expensive considering how much he used to be. I saw that the Panthers declined a trade and it was 2 first-round picks, a couple seconds, and some other draft capital, and I saw that and I was like, why wouldn't you pull the trigger on that? That's kind of insane. But yeah, if you're the Panthers, you lost a little bit of your investment on Brian Burns, so it sucks for them. But for the Giants, you get him for a little bit cheaper, and, I think he's going to be a really good addition for the defense. You also got Devin Singletary coming in for Saquon Barkley. He was on the Texans. He was very solid for us, in my opinion. He had over 1,000 all-purpose yards, which is pretty good. And, I think he's going to be a pretty solid player. I don't think they're going to end up having him be a workhorse back like Saquon was. I think, they're going to probably have him split the backfield with either, I think, Eric Gray is their second running back, or, I think that they might just sign Matt Breida back. He wasn't horrible for them. Looking at their O-line, it's not horrible. You got Evan Neal, but he was hurt all of last year, and just in general, that offensive line was pretty horrible due to injuries. It was tough for Saquon. I had him in fantasy last year. It was tough watching because, it just felt like every time he got the ball handed off to him, you're like, oh, yay, 1 yard. Let's go. And it was very rare he would get a 28-yard run. And it's not because Saquon isn't a beast or anything. It's just because his offensive line didn't really give him any holes to go through. Let's look at their defense for a second here. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and Kayvon Thibodeau, all are great defensive players. But, other than that, the defense isn't very good. If the Giants get to where they wanted to be a couple of seasons ago, they really need to bolster their defense. Looking at the receiver core, they got Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, and Wan'Dale Robinson. So, not horrible. Actually, pretty horrible. I'm not going to lie. Malik Neighbors is pretty good. Darius Slayton's solid, but Wan'Dale Robinson, he can't really be your wide receiver 3 if you want to win games. Isaiah McKenzie's also there. He's pretty solid. Jalen Hyatt was pretty solid last year as well. So, they got some options there, but no, like, absolute standouts just yet. Looking at their tight end, Daniel Bellinger, he's not horrible. He definitely was a pretty solid player overall, in my opinion. So, I'm curious to see how he plays next year. You still got Brian Daboll as your coach. I mean, he's still a great coach overall. He doesn't have the right team around him to compete with. He's very smart as a coach, and I think that he's, like, very direct, and I think that's great for an organization, but I think that he really needs players. So, yeah, overall, the team isn't very good. Looking at their schedule, I think they get maybe 3 to 4 wins, probably less. The only reason why I put it 3 to 4 is just to give them, like, any given Sunday wins, because it's very possible. And to be honest with you, 3 to 4 wins, like I said, might be a little lower. I feel like it might be a little high, too, just because of how competitive the NFC East is. All right, looking at the Commanders here, their key additions include Frankie Louvu, Austin Eckler, Marcus Mariota, Jeremy Chin, Bobby Wagner, and they drafted Jaden Daniels with the 2nd overall pick, Jerzon Newton, defensive tackle, the 2nd round pick, Mike Sirianski, cornerback, 2nd round pick, Ben Sanu, tight end, round 2, Brandon Coleman, offensive guard, round 3, and Luke McCaffrey, wide receiver, round 3. And looking at their losses, Cameron Curl, Curtis Samuel, Sam Howell, and Kendrick Fuller. So I think that they honestly had one of the best off seasons. I think, Jaden Daniels, he's my favorite quarterback prospect. I'm not gonna lie. I do like him a little bit more than Bryce Young, just because I think that he's a really solid player overall. And watching his film, I thought he was a really, really, really good player. I think signing vets like Eckler and Wagner is going to be important for leadership. I think that that's, very good for what they want to accomplish, and I think that's going to be very effective in what they want to do. I think Jaden Daniels is coming in here with a solid receiver room. He's got Terry McLaurin, who's a very good receiver, Jahan Dotson, and Luke McCaffrey. I mean, that's a pretty solid receiver room for a rookie quarterback. Certainly not as bad as Bryce Young, who had Adam Thielen, and that was basically it, to be honest with you. I can see Eckler and Brian Robinson probably splitting the backfield here. I don't think Eckler's going to be a workhorse anymore, especially because of his age. And, I just think that they really signed him just to be a veteran, like I said, and just provide a little bit of leadership to see if they can compete in the NFC East. Their O-line's not great, and, that might cause some concerns for Jaden Daniels to get hurt, especially with the skinny frame. And he's probably not going to have much time in the pocket, so it's really going to test him as a rookie and see, is this guy going to be really, really good in the league? Jonathan Allen is a great player on their defensive line. I really like him a lot. And I think Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and Jeremy Chin are going to help the defense out a lot. I think they're a solid team overall on defense, and I think that, they still have Emmanuel Forbes, who's a very, very good corner. And, I think that their defense isn't really anything to worry about. I think it's more about their offense to really, see, they're testing with Jaden Daniels out. They're testing with Luke McCaffrey as their wide receiver 3. They're testing Austin Eckler out, And they still have Dan Quinn as a coach, and I think that they possibly want to expand him with his new players on the team after the 4-13 finish last year. That's just my theory. If they didn't want him around, they would have fired him last year with all the coaches in free agency this year. And I mean, looking at their schedule, I think that the Commanders may end up winning around 7 to 8 games in the regular season, and that's mainly due to veteran leadership and Jalen Daniels only being a rookie. I'm telling you, I think Jaden Daniels is actually going to be one of the best players in this draft. And, you can quote me on it, whatever. If my prediction's wrong, it's wrong. But I think that he's a stud. And honestly, I think that if you give him a couple years to develop, he's going to be a really good player. All right, looking at their Eagles, key additions, obviously Saquon Barkley. They got CJ Gardner-Johnson back after 1 season. They got linebacker Bryce Huff, Devin White, Kenny Pickett, Quinnen Mitchell, who's a cornerback round 1, Cooper DeJean, round 2 cornerback, Jackson Hunt, defensive end, round 3. Some of their losses here, they got DeAndre Swift, running back, Hassan Reddick, linebacker, safety, Kevin Byard, and center, Jason Kelsey. So overall, I think they had a great free agency as well. They signed Saquon and they lost DeAndre Swift. That's a major upgrade in my opinion. You're getting more corners here with CJ Gardner-Johnson. You're getting Cooper DeJean and Quinnen Mitchell in the draft. I think that those guys are going to be really, really good. And I think it's kind of funny that CJ only left for 1 season to go with the Lions. And then he's like, oh, now I'm back. Anyway, they got pretty good veteran linebackers as well. Bryce Huff, Devin White. Devin White's pretty old, but he's still, been in the league for a long time. He has a lot of knowledge to share with the younger guys. And, Nick Sirianni's still a good coach, even with all of his controversies. I know, he says a lot to the fans, and, he might be hated on by most fans in the NFL, but he's still a pretty solid coach. I mean, taking a team to the NFL Super Bowl is a very hard thing to accomplish, no matter who's on your squad. And, they still have one of the best O-lines in the league, even with Jason Kelsey leaving. I mean, Saquon is going to be really effective this year, in my opinion, because he's going to have so many more holes, and he's going to be able to run through basically any defense, in my opinion. Maybe the Ravens might give him some struggle in the Jets. Considering Saquon ran with a bad O-line last year, I think that this is going to be able to help him reach his potential a lot easier. And looking at A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, I think they're still one of the best wide receiver duos in the league, in my opinion. I mean, A.J. Brown's the big body, sure-handed wide receiver, and you got Devonta Smith, the speed threat. So I think that they're going to be really, really good together. And I also think Dallas Goedert is still a very, very good tight end. I think he's going to be really, really good, especially with Jalen Hurts, who's still a very good quarterback. I mean, I wonder if he puts too much pressure on himself. It looks like he does a lot, especially when they're winning. Like, why aren't you smiling, bro? But yeah, looking at Jalen Carter, he's also a stud coming into his second year this year. He could have honestly won Defensive Rookie of the Year over Will Anderson. I would have been mad, but I would have understood it. You know, you still have Reed Blankenship, who's a great safety. I love him a lot. And yeah, you got one of the best defenses and offenses in the NFL. They're a very balanced team. They're one of the best teams on paper, just like the Jets. And winning really just comes down to execution and playing with joy, in my opinion. They don't play with joy at all, and I think that that's why they lose a lot of their games. They put way too much pressure on themselves to succeed. And, you know, their schedule isn't actually that hard considering how good they are. I mean, putting them at 13 to 14 wins, for me, I feel like that's fair. All right, on to our last team here. We got the Dallas Cowboys. So, some of their additions, Eric Hendricks, Ezekiel Elliott, and in their draft, they got Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle, round 1, Marshawn Kneeland, defensive end, round 2, Cooper Beebe, offensive guard, round 3, and Maurice Liafu, linebacker, round 3 as well. Some of their losses include Stephon Gilmore, a quarterback. He hasn't signed anywhere yet, but he's definitely leaving the Cowboys. Tyron Smith, tackle, and Tony Pollard, running back. So this was definitely disappointing free agency for the Cowboys after Jerry Jones said that he was going all in. The only new person he got really was Eric Kendricks, and, you know, Ezekiel Elliott came back. But, you know, Dak Prescott and CD are going into their contract years, so this is a very questionable team right now. I mean, you don't know if Dak Prescott's going to come back. CD is probably going to be back, but I don't know about Dak. You know, he might be leaving, and that could be a drastic change for the Cowboys for the future. And like I said, CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks are still there. They're pretty solid. But, I mean, I think they really need one more receiver right now. I think currently Jalen Turbett is their wide receiver 3. And if you want to win a championship, you need a better wide receiver 3 than Jalen Turbett. No disrespect. If they should have really signed someone like Tyler Boyd in free agency, and that would have been perfect. And, you know, Jake Ferguson's still a really, really good tight end. It's kind of funny. The Cowboys, I feel like, just, like, make tight ends really good, just, like, out of nowhere. Their team has a solid offensive line. Zach Martin's still a great player. They got really good blockers, in my opinion. And, you know, like I said, Ezekiel Elliott's back. I don't think he ever should have left. He was, like, Dallas, written all over him. You still have Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence in your defense, who are very great rushers on your line, and as a linebacker, Micah Parsons. You also got Deron Bland, Malik Hooker, and Trayvon Diggs on the secondary, who are all very, very good pieces. And, you know, you still got Mike McCarthy at head coach, who's a solid coach. I don't think, you know, Jerry Jones is going to give up on Mike McCarthy unless Dak Prescott leaves. I think he's really keen on McCarthy and Dak Prescott together, and I could see, honestly, this being the last year of Mike McCarthy. But, you know, I think they made some good draft picks to try to weaken the blow on losing Tyron Smith. You know, they got offensive line, linebackers, and a defensive end. I think that's very important. And, you know, I think they're a solid team overall, but they're just not Super Bowl bound, in my opinion. And, you know, CD, Dak, and Micah's going to need a contract at the end of the 2025 season, I believe. So not next year, but the year after. And so there's definitely a lot of question marks around this team. They could definitely become a dumpster fire, in my opinion. Looking at this season, though, I don't think their schedule's too bad, and I think they should be able to finish with 9 to 10 wins this season. I think that's pretty fair overall. And honestly, I think they can finish a lot better. It just comes down to their chemistry. I don't think it's going to be that good unless, you know, Dak Prescott gets a contract, CeeDee Lamb gets a contract, Micah Parsons gets a contract, but I don't think that's going to happen. You know, I don't think Jerry Jones is willing to spend all of that money in just a one-season period, and so I think that's why their record's going to be way below last year, which was 12-5. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you guys thought. I'm going to leave all my links in the description below, just like all my other videos. It's going to have my TikTok, it's going to have my Twitters, and it's going to have my blog, where I write about different Houston sports stuff if you guys want to learn about that stuff. But yeah, thank you guys for watching the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.